name of the chapter? Who remembers? All the way from yesterday. The qualities, the transcendental qualities of Vishnu. You got most of it. This is live. Is that in focus? Let me see what we got here. The marker is placed at the 6th canto, chapter 11, text number 24. It's 25? Okay, we're turning the page here. The marker is from yesterday. Could you look in that bag and see if there's a pair of glasses in there? I think I have real eyeglasses like real grown-ups have. Oh, there they are. Thank you so much. Old age. Nanaka pristang nachaparamestyang. Nanaka pristam nachaparamestyang. Anybody have it on the phone? All right, I'm just going to just chant it and we'll go to the translation. Nasarabhamam Narasadhipatyam Nayoga Siddhir Apunar Bhavam Ba Samanjasatva Virhaya Kankshe. Translation. O my Lord, source of all opportunities, I do not desire to enjoy in Dhruvaloka. That's the correct verse? The heavenly planets, or the planet where Lord Brahma resides. Nor do I want to be the supreme ruler of all the earthly planets, or the lower planetary systems. I do not desire to be master of the powers of mystic yoga, nor do I want liberation if I have to give up your lotus feet. So this is Vritasura speaking.
You can also read 24 because the scheduling, it just had 25 on there, but it did 23 yesterday.
Oh, so you need 24 and 25 today. Okay, we'll go back. This is Vritasura speaking, right? Yeah? The verse before that, O my Lord, O Supreme Personality of Godhead. This is like hairy, ferocious, monstrous demon speaking. Oh my Lord, O Supreme Personality of Godhead, will I again be able to be a servant of your eternal servants, who find shelter only at your lotus feet, O Lord of my life? May I again become their servant, so that my mind may always think of your transcendental attributes, my words always glorify those attributes, and my body always engage in the loving service of your Lordship. Krishna's garland. Wow, it's so beautiful. These girls are performing amazing, loving austerities, right? Preparing these garlands. They're so first class. Srila Prabhupada's purport is Divine Grace. This verse gives the sum and substance of devotional life. One must first become a servant of the servant of the servant of the Lord. Das, anudas. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu advised, and he also showed by his own example, that a living entity should always desire to be a servant of the servant of the servant of Krishna, the maintainer of the gopis. Gopi bharta parakamalayam das anudas. This means that one must accept a spiritual master who comes in the disciplic succession and is a servant of the Lord. Under his direction, one must then engage one's three properties, namely his body, mind, and words. The body should be engaged in physical activity under the order of the master. The mind should think of Krishna incessantly, and one's words should be engaged in preaching the glories of the Lord. If one is thus engaged in the loving service of the Lord, one's life is successful. And then he talks about, again addresses Krishna. I do not desire to enjoy Dhruvaloka. I don't want to live with where Lord Brahma lives. I don't want to be the ruler of the earthly planet or the lower planetary systems. I do not desire to be master of the powers of mystic yoga, nor do I want liberation if I have to give up your lotus feet. Om Gyantimirandhyasya Gyananjanan Shalakaya Chakshurul Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was standing in the darkness of ignorance. I was born in the darkness of ignorance. Ignorance. My spiritual master is kindly opening my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. Let us offer respectful obeisances unto him again and again. We appeal to all of you to offer a prayer to Krishna now. Please pray that Krishna will bless us, that what we have to say here is nothing but what we've heard from Guru and Shastra, with no distortion and no inappropriate motivation. We're here in the class, we're here in the Srimad Bhagavatam class, we're attending to the words of Shastra on the spiritual master's request as an offering to Krishna. Being here, offering our attention to the words of Shastra is pleasing to the Lord. We know what a great endeavor Srila Prabhupada made to present this literature to us. And we know that Srila Vyasadeva composed the Srimad Bhagavatam to help us. It is said that those who have lost their vision due to the dense darkness of the age of Kali will get light from this Purana. This literature is meant to bring about a revolution in the impious lives of this world's misdirected civilizations. Such literatures are heard, sung, and chanted by purified souls who are thoroughly honest. So we've been hearing this story, and we've had so many wonderful devotees giving, retelling the story, Vritasura, Chitraketu taking birth as Vritasura, and then him speaking to Indra. What kind of principles can we milk out of this story? We know the story itself, but what are we learning? What are the lessons? Josh, think of any lessons from this story? That's one thing. Right. It says a fool is undetected until he opens his mouth. That we can hear what someone has to say, and then we can understand that this is a foolish person or a great soul. Not by looking at them, but by hearing what they have to say. That's what Srila Prabhupada told us, right? Who else can describe lesson, principle illustrated by this story? Again? Your hand up, you're scratching it. Okay, just go see what he has.
When they brought back his son, and he was preaching, he said, what mother and father, what lifetime?
Mm-hmm.
Giving you the eternality of the soul. You shouldn't get caught up just in a temporary situation.
Right, it gives us perspective that life after life, we have a father, we have a mother. Which father are you? Chitraketu's son was saying, Angira Muni didn't at first preach to Maharaj Chitraketu. At first he just helped him with his desire to have a son. But then, when the son was murdered, and amazing description of how Chitraketu was like tearing his hair out and stumbling and crying and so much overwhelmed that he lost his son. Then he preached. And he illustrated by bringing the soul back into the body and said, oh, my dear soul, this is your father. And the soul was, and the child in the baby's body was saying, Father? Which father was that? I've had so many fathers. The soul is eternal. And the soul is the actual person. And these bodily relationships are very ephemeral, superficial. What else have we learned from the story of Vritasura and Indra?
Most profound thing for me was this delineation between Indra and Vritrasura and the fact that they're both devotees, but Indra is a materialistic devotee,
Hmm.
and Vritrasura is a pure devotee.
That's a,
On a personal level, it speaks to the fact that I don't want to slip into doing my duties for the sake of fame or for the sake of, for the sake of my own pleasure, and then justify that with the Lord's service. Rather, I want to serve the Lord for why He wants and what He wants.
I want to please the Lord. Yeah, that's a very powerful lesson, principle. We were reading a few weeks ago, or maybe last month, about that one verse that says, it's very important to understand the distinction between religious activities that are for our own satisfaction and advancement and devotional service. They're both religious activities, but is the goal me, or is the goal you, Lord? I want to please you. That's a really important principle. So there are different levels. There's a stratification. There are different levels of people involved in religious life. And for ourselves here in this room, we have to be careful because it happens that even in the context of devotional service, people become absorbed in pious activities for their own pleasure, advancement, comfort, safety, materially increased pleasurable positions are strived for by different kinds of religious activities. It's a beginning, at least there's an acknowledgement of the existence of the Lord, but it's not, it doesn't have the flavor of pure love. It's basically structured, regulated sense gratification. It's basically self-indulgent activity, even though there's an invocation to the Lord. So we have to be careful we don't slip into that. Srila Prabhupada is warning us. The Shastra is warning us. Please be careful. You do have these different levels of sobriety. We were quoting Bhagavad Gita verse a few days ago. For those who are attracted by material comforts and pleasures and are enamored by such things, the resolute determination of devotional service to the Supreme Lord does not take place. So these little trinkets, these little tasty kinds of experiences. What's that story? This girl is the princess. There are many suitors chasing her, appealing to her to be their consort. So she decides to test them by a race, one by one. And she goes racing out through the forest, along the forest path, and she has placed along the path a gold brick. And the guy's chasing her, and he sees the brick. Oh. Now, the more bricks, and then further along another brick. After a while, that person can never catch the princess because he's loaded down with these other trinkets. Only one who bypassed that can, and it's an analogy. The idea is that Krishna will offer mukti bhukti siddhi kama. Sakaliya shanti Krishna bhakta naishkarma atta eva shanti. You know that verse? If you're endeavoring for mukti bhukti siddhi karma, some kind of indulgence or liberation or mystical powers, sakaliya shanti, you will never become peaceful. Krishna bhakta naishkarma atta eva shanti. But a devotee of the Lord will be satisfied. Dhanara Maharaj was quoting the other day, if you're looking for pleasure, you'll never be satisfied. If you're looking for Krishna, you'll be satisfied. Ahetuki apratiyata, unceasing, unmotivated devotional service to Krishna, the only way to satisfy the self. Unceasing. What does that mean, unceasing? Totally in. I do this service, and 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 I do this service. Right? Probably sometimes would say, work until you drop. Love wants to give all. Without tapasya, without austerity, without sacrifice. Where's the love? I'm a devotee. Are you a devotee? Of what? My mind and senses. So there are different levels of sobriety. A person who's totally sober and is not attracted by the baubles. We were mentioning that story, what's her name? Kushmanda Kushmapati at Vrindavan. Her child left his body 5 years old. The crazy kid did something, and I won't go into details, but then she told us she used to be a belly dancer. Mother Kushmapati. And she had all these like jewelry, rings, necklaces. And she was sleeping at night, and she told us, my son came to me, or in a dream or a vision, and he came into the door of the room and he said, Mataji, come on, let's go. And she said, let's go where? Back home, back to Godhead, let's go. So she said, okay, just let me pack up my jewelry. So she went in her drawer, and she was, putting things in a bag, and, Mata, let's go. And then she was like packing this, packing that. She didn't want to go without these things. And then the sun was gone. And she woke up and she realized, what is all this stuff that I've got my mind fixed on that I think is more valuable than going back home, back to Godhead? The children do a play. Another analogy, like the things that weight us down. And they have this river that they make with ribbons. And children are going like this, and there's like a river. So on one side of the river, there's the Harinam party. And they're chanting. Some of the children are the Harinam party. Hare Krishna. And this guy comes along, he's carrying this big bag. And he looks at devotees chanting, and looks so happy, and they're going, come on, come on. And he, come over there. He goes, well, I'd have to cross the river. You know this, right? No. What about my rocks? He's got a bag full of rocks. And they forget your rocks. Ridiculous, Forget your rocks. So he starts to go in the river, and then he goes back, and he takes a few rocks out of his bag and puts them in his pockets, and he trusts. May Krishna continue to bless you with pure devotional service. Of course, trying to swim with a bag full of rocks is ridiculous. And the Bhagavatam describes that the things that we accumulate in this world are like decorations for a dead body. Baubles. Like putting a millstone around your neck and trying to swim across the river. What is that thing Jesus says? Man comes to him and says, I'm fasting twice a week. I give donations. I'm always there at the morning program. I'm following all the regs. I study the scripture. What else must I do to enter the kingdom of God? He says, drop all these things that you have and come and follow me. And it says in the Bible that man, he walked away. And then Jesus said to his disciples, it's easier for, who knows? It's easier for a camel to pass through the eye of a needle than it is for a rich man to enter the kingdom of God. Now that doesn't mean that a person can have a great deal of facility, wealth, opulences, but that person is using it in Krishna's service. Who's Radhanath Sabha's? Nathaji in India, right? He has like 40,000 employees. They make light bulbs. And he told us, before I was initiated, I was a businessman like Donald Trump, and I always say, what's in it for me? What's in it for me? That was my mantra. But he says that now that I'm giving myself to the Hare Krishna movement, with every moment and every bit of facility, I'm always thinking, what's in for my spiritual master? How can I use this to push on Krishna consciousness? He didn't abandon his family, his house, his business, his employees, but he began to use those things. He's helped so much with different projects for preaching. So that is a real thing, because nirmama means what? Nothing is mine. Nothing is mine. It's not mine. We are stewards. The Christian uses that term. Stewards means I'm caring for this building. I'm caring for this family. I'm caring for this wealth or this talent that I have. It really belongs to Krishna. Let me figure out how to use it for Krishna. Then I'm a good steward. Otherwise, I'm a thief. It's as simple as that. As long as I think this is mine, or I'm the Lord of all I survey. Right? I'm this, everything I see here, this is mine, this is mine, this is mine, and this is mine. But a householder in Krishna consciousness is actually thinking, this house is Krishna's house. In every house, there's a deity. The householder will install a deity of Krishna, we have an altar. And then when you're cleaning the floor, you think, I'm cleaning Krishna's floor. When I'm cooking to offer it to the Lord. When I'm paying the rent, I'm paying Krishna's rent. It's not mine. It's not mine. Never was mine. Never will be mine. What the heck? What am I thinking? We were singing that song the other day with Devananda from Vrindavan. He said, you got more than you need. My God, what were you thinking? You know that song? You got more than you need. Take a good look at yourself. You got more than you need. My God, what were you thinking? You got more than you need. It's just a burden in your life. It's just a burden in your life. We had this one lady, what's her name? Petita, from Luxembourg. You know Luxembourg? It's near Germany. It's a very, very wealthy little tiny country. And she was a banker. And somehow or other, she met this American guy, and they fell in love. And she came here to New York. She was going to move in with him, but they had a big fight, and he threw her out. So she wound up staying with us over there on 3rd Street in a little room. And she just intended to just come here for a short visit, even though she was going to move in with this guy. Everything wasn't totally engraved in stone. So she had just one little suitcase. And then she started coming to the morning program, and she started helping with Krishna's Prasad distribution for the homeless. She was doing the baking every day. She had like a paradigm shift. She became very sober, and she said, you know, I'm living in this little room in Luxembourg. I have a house, a big house. I have a Mercedes-Benz. I have crystal glass in my china closets, and I have a grand piano, and I have Persian rugs, and I have antique furniture, and I have to clean all that stuff, and I have to house all that stuff, and I have to insure all that stuff, and I have to lock up the place, and I have to, you know, I'm just, the things are like, it's like a chain around my neck. And after she was here, she just kept staying and staying. And she stayed here a few months. She went back to Luxembourg. She just sold everything and gave everything away in 2 weeks. And she came back here to stay with us again. And now she's living in a spiritual community in Wisconsin. And she said, my possessions were possessing me. Huh? Isn't it? It's so hard not to get accumulation going on, right? The house becomes cluttered. Ken and I were just cleaning out the basement. We had some people staying with us, and they had accumulated all these things. We actually had to rent a truck and have 2 guys come and unload it. And they were just with us for a short time, but they just this and that and this and that and this and that and this and that, and you know, just builds up. My sister moved to Florida. She was living on Long Island for 25 years with her husband and 1 child. And when she moved to Florida, first of all, she had started selling stuff on the front lawn for about 3 months. You know how they do that, you know. And then she finally got it boiled down to 1 tractor trailer full of stuff. It's like, my God, Anne, what are you doing? What are you going to do with all that stuff? These are my things, And I visited her in Florida, and they hadn't picked out a house yet, so they were living in this apartment, and all this stuff was in boxes, and you could just barely walk through the apartment that they were staying in temporarily. There was just so many things, and she was there for several months. I said, what? You haven't even opened these boxes in months. You obviously don't need all this stuff. But the thing is, you get attached to these things. Like that Scrooge, what's that, the Christmas Carol with Ebenezer Scrooge, right? And, his business partner comes and he's got all these chains and trunks. And he said, what is all that stuff? My God, what were you thinking? Take a good look at yourself. It's in material. Jesus said, this world is a bridge. Cross over it, but don't try to build a house on it. Don't store your treasure up here, where the thief will steal. What is it? With that verse in the Bhagavatam? Rajatastam. It says, a person who has more than he absolutely needs is always in anxiety. Who knows the rest of it? Never heard it? He's always in anxiety. He's thinking animals and birds might destroy my possessions. My friends and relatives might come and take my stuff. Thieves and rogues might come. The government taxation might come. The inevitable time factor might take it away. Even, I'm afraid, my own self might do something and blow it and lose all these things that I've stacked up, And then in India, sorry, what do they have? The Naga Babas? The naked sannyasis. They don't have anything. Of course, that's in some sense ridiculous, but, the spirit of it is, what do you really need? What do you really need? How simple can you get? Or, how can I use what Krishna's given me appropriately? Living on the edge. Prabhupada moved here with nothing but the order of his spiritual master. Again, the Bible, Jesus said, go and preach. Don't worry about where you're going to sleep. Don't worry about what you're going to eat. Don't bring a bag of money. Just preach. If you preach, if you join the movement of preaching, everything you need will be there somehow. Somehow. And I've been with Srila Prabhupada 45 years so far, which is really just the beginning. But I've seen hundreds and thousands of my godbrothers and godsisters who raised families, who, for decades and decades and decades. What is it, Arjuna? What were you saying? What's that? Yeah. And they lived the sadhu life, They lived the life, simple living, high thinking. All we really have is our rounds and our service. What do you have? What do you need? And it's startling, to see somebody step into that quality of life where they think, Krishna, I'm yours. I invite you in. Whatever I've got, show me what to do with it. And then you're free. Nothing to protect, nothing to lose, nothing to gain. Just now, how can I serve Krishna at this moment? Right? See that? See the smile on Joseph's face? He's happy. He just did this, right? He stepped into the temple. What did you leave behind?
The garden.
Huh?
Garden.
Like your garden? Don't worry. Krishna it wasn't yours, but it'll be manifest in another way, like Sudama Vipra. Look at Ludini Shakti Prabhu. Is he here today? No? Radhanath Swami just said to him, forget it, leave it. He left behind the whole farm. You know what they say? He bought the whole farm. His relationships, his responsibilities, his possessions. He said, even now, I brought everything here. I narrowed it down and then boiled it down, and I've got all this stuff in my room. And I realized I don't even need half of this stuff, He brought me over the other day a quilt. He said, I don't need this. Use it in the bed and breakfast, He said, I'm trying to whittle it down a little bit, because stuck with these things that are distracting me from what I could give in devotion, in the time and energy and attention in Krishna's devotional service. Prema Pramartamahan. Love of God only. So here we have these different levels of devotees. You've mentioned Indra and Vritasura. And these represent different levels of sobriety. We can become intoxicated by alcohol, by drugs, by fame, by wealth, by youth, by sexuality, and the intoxication covers over our awareness of reality. And then intoxication wears off. Lakshmi is called Chanchala, is that the word? Flickering? She's here and gone. You know, it's like smoke. You can't really grab it. But we can have the right attitude. We're talking about a change of consciousness. Nirmama means nothing is mine. This is yours, Lord. You've given me this much as your steward to take care of and to engage in your devotional service. We ask for questions or comments, angles of visions, contributions, please. Arjuna is jumping out of his socks there, ready to... Yeah? He doesn't have socks on. Mataji, you have your experience? I mean, you've had an experience that most of us haven't. You've been a mother in the devotional service, right? Huh? And who has had that experience here? Only you.
But what to say? I can say, can you guys hear me? Is this working?
I don't hear it.
What I can say is my biggest attachments are absolutely my children. So that's actually something, as you get older, you begin to see what your attachments are, like you said, what you need, what you don't need. For me, that's a challenge, how to become detached, but really I am attached.
Well, we consider these are not my children, these are Krishna's children. And he's given these children for me to take care of, and you've done such a good job, you know. Not an easy thing to be a parent 24/7 for decades. Huh? Give him the microphone so we can all hear what he's saying. I can't hear. But we can't hear you. Okay.
Arjuna Prabhu was saying that because my children are devotees, there shouldn't be any anxiety. I was with a devotee who was leaving her body. I was taking care of her. And her two sons were there. And at the time that she was leaving, I was right at her head. And I said to this devotee, I said, Prabhu, you want to come? Your mom's ready to leave. And he said, no, Mother Mulak, I can't come because if she sees me, she will stay and she needs to go. So that really stuck with me, that attachment. It ended up he was the only one in the room when she left.
Huh.
He was so attached and suffered so much from her loss. So that's a big one.
So isn't there spiritual attachment and material attachment?
Is that a question?
Isn't there spiritual attachment and material attachment? Two different kinds of attachment.
Yes.
Not just attachment in one glom, one size fits all. Some attachment is appropriate.
I
Sure.
think about when I'm leaving my body. If my girls are there, maybe I would not want to leave. So that does cause me some anxiety because I'm attached to going back to Godhead. And do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I'm grappling with that.
It might be consolation to remember that relationships are eternal. Ah.
Thank you.
These relationships are eternal. And there's a concept called I believe in the communion of saints. You've ever heard that? Communion of saints? You know what that is? It's in the Apostles' Creed. I believe in, one God, the Father Almighty, creator of heaven and earth. And I believe in the forgiveness of sins. I believe in Lord Jesus Christ who came. I believe in the communion of saints. The communion of saints means if I am glorifying Krishna and serving Krishna, that I am totally attached and close to, not separated from anybody else who is glorifying Krishna and serving Krishna. No matter when they lived, no matter where they lived, no matter who they were, I'm in that association. But as soon as I stop serving Krishna, leave a little gap, leave a little break, stop glorifying Krishna, start hankering, immediately you're separated from everybody. Even if you're sleeping in the same bed with them, you're not with them. The material world is a place of separation. There's an old Jewish story about Simon the Doubter. It's like the Doubting Thomas. And he would think, should I go to the temple this morning? Should I not go to the temple? Should I give a donation? Should I not give a donation? Should I do service? Should I not do service? He was always like that, dithering back and forth with his doubting mind. And they have this one festival where, I don't know what the occasion is, where the prophet Elijah, they leave a seat at the table for the prophet Elijah. And they have a feast, and they're all sitting there. And he said, you think Elijah's really here? Maybe he's not here. This is just a myth, right? And then this hand comes through the ceiling. He says, Simon, come with me. Grab my hand. Should I take his hand? Should I take? All right. Takes his hand. Pew! Goes out through the ceiling. Goes up through the, atmosphere, out of the planet, all the way to the spiritual world. And he sees in the spiritual world how everyone is together and connected and never separated. Nothing can separate you from the love of Krishna, from the love of Christ. Not mountains, not oceans, not time, not space. So he sees how together, and then he brings him back. And as he's coming back, he sees the planet, and he sees how the different countries are separated from each other and turned away from each other with their own selfish interests. And he sees how the different cities within any country are competing with each other. The Celtics are playing against whoever, whatever, the different baseball teams. So then he starts to see the town that he lives in, and he sees the houses are turned away from each other. And then he sees the people, and he sees their hearts are turned away from each other. And they're separated from each other by the consciousness that they have. And how there's a different quality of consciousness in the spiritual dimension. Paras tasmat tu bhavanyo vyakto viktat sanatana. Beyond this dimension that we perceive with our gross senses, Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says to Bhagavad Gita, Paras tasmat, there's another dimension of existence. And the quality of life there is different. There is no separation. And you can go there. You can enter into that quality of consciousness and that quality of life where you're never separated from your kids or anybody. It's a deep, loving togetherness in that communion of saints. And there's this Protestant minister who was arrested in Romania for preaching. He was arrested by the Nazis and in prison. Then he was arrested by the communists when he got, because everybody realized this guy is like got a lot of spiritual pull. And so they put him in solitary confinement for the first 2 years. He was in prison 14 years. First 2 years, he was in solitary confinement. Even the guards weren't allowed to talk to him. So he said, I got to find out if I'm really a devotee now, because there's nobody to show off to. Nobody knows what I'm doing, what I'm thinking, what I'm saying. So he began to have morning program and kirtan, and he would give class, and he would recite, compose poetry and songs. And he said, I read his book, he said, I experienced the communion of saints. While I was glorifying the Lord, I was right there with everybody else who was ever glorifying the Lord at any time in any place. But as soon as I got into material consciousness and started lamenting my position, bing, I was alone. But Krishna is so wonderful. Let me throw that in at least once in class. Can everybody say that, please? How wonderful is Krishna? Okay. Krishna is so wonderful. It's so wonderful that he gives us access and information about the nature of that other dimension, about the quality of life there. And even if you think you're alone with Krishna. You're alone with Krishna. Because he's always there. Huh? If you think you're alone, some people, one devotee was giving class, what's his name? Hari Prashad. He gave a whole class about loneliness. And then he said he realized that he was alone. When he thought he was alone with Krishna. All glory to Srila Prabhupada. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Haribo, Haribo. Haribo, Haribo.
Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Jaya Radha Murli Dada Radha Murli Dada Radhe. Jaya Radha Murli Dada Radha Murli Dada Radhe. Jaya Gaura Chandra, Gaura Chandra, Gaura Chandra, Jaya Gaura Chandra. Jaya Gaura Chandra, Gaura Chandra, Gaura Chandra, Jaya Gaura Chandra. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Prabhupada.
Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama